Hello and welcome to Spardha Lines, your one-stop destination for the civil services preparation, UPSC, KPSC and other relevant examinations. Today before we start with our session, we have two important announcements. Most of you who are preparing for KPSC exams, KAS exams, CTI exams would be wondering, what is that one single source where I would be able to study my current affairs from? In order to help and simplify you, what we are bringing you is the Current Affairs magazine. All that you have to do is buy this magazine, which is exclusively for the KS examination, CTI, Group C exams, PDO exams, FDA and other state exams. This first edition from the month of November 2022 up until April 2023, what we will have is the first special edition of the magazine, which will be available on Wednesday, and it will be only 40 pages. Now you might be wondering what will be covered in the 40 pages. All the current affairs topics that are important for the state level exams will be covered as part of this magazine. So your one-stop source for the entire current affairs session will be in this magazine. So what are you waiting for? The minute this is released, all that you have to do is buy the magazine, which will cover all areas of current affairs, and this will be one single source which will cover all aspects, all areas that is required for your preparation at the state level. And the next important announcement is with respect to the examination. Most of you would also be wondering what are the kinds of questions that the examinative authority may ask you. In order to help you out as well, we are coming up with the test series, and this All India GS test series for CTI and Group C exams will commence from 21/10/2023 at 10 AM. We will also have all Karnataka communication paper test series for CTI and Group C at 2 PM and the weekly current affairs test series on 18/10/2023 as well as on 25/10/2023. So how am I gonna learn, and how are the questions framed? What are the kind of questions that come up in these examinations? You want to be tested, and that is what we're gonna give you. So whatever is required from the examination point of view, the discussions, everything will be covered as part of this initiative. So what are you waiting for? Hit the subscribe button, like the channel and share it with your fellow aspirants so that many candidates will also get the required preparation for their examination. Let's get started and look into the first practice question as well as the first article. Which among the following is India's first deep water transshipment port? Jawaharlal Nehru Port, Krishnapatnam Port, Visakhapatnam Port, Vizhinjam Port. The answer to this is Vizhinjam Port. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu makes a reference to Vizhinjam Port. So where is this Vizhinjam Port? This happens to be a port which is in the state of Kerala. So the first important parameter from your preliminary examination point is, where is this Vizhinjam Port? This happens to be the port which is present in the state of Kerala. What are the advantages of this port? What is the importance of this port and the significance of this port? We have something called as the transshipment. What is this transshipment cargo? Let's say for example, there is one of the shipments. This shipment, let's say for example, has a large cargo, has many equipments, it also has many goods as well. This has started off from Europe. Let's assume for a moment that this has started from Portugal, and all the way from Portugal it has to go, let's say hypothetically, to Japan. So it comes to somewhere to a middle destination, and from this destination it again goes to Japan. So this shipment that is come all the way from Portugal and then enters one of the shipments, that is enters one of the region, and from that particular place it moves to Japan, is what is called as transshipment cargo, which basically means that you have the goods that are procured from Portugal and intermediately it stops over at one of the places at a particular place intermediately, and from intermediate place it goes to a new destination. That is what is called as transshipment. So from source A it enters to source B, and from source B it ultimately reaches the destination. This source B that is acting as a point of center where from the Portugal it reaches one place and from this place it reaches the destination is the transshipment cargo. So the shipment of goods or containers to an intermediate destination then to yet another destination is what is called as the transshipment cargo. So this Vizhinjam project that has been initiated in Kerala is for the assistance of the transshipment cargo. So this has natural depth of over 20 meter as close one of the nautical mile from the sea coast. Depth will attract large container vessels currently in operation. Port will provide 2000 meter of core length, and this is designed to cater to transshipment containers and provide for other type of cargo such as multi-purpose and break bulk cargos. So what is the significance of it? The significance of it is, as of now, when you look at these transshipment places, we have Colombo which is acting as it. We also have ports in Singapore which is acting as it. Now since this new port of Vizhinjam is developed in India, India will become the hub of it. So what we will receive is transshipments from multiple European countries, West Asian countries, and ultimately from the intermediate destination it will go to the final destination. So we would be able to compete with the best in the business like in Colombo, like Singapore and many other countries, and as a result what we would be creating is more employment opportunities, more exports from India, and at the same time we will have more foreign exchange that will drive our economy as well. So this article primarily goes about speaking about Vizhinjam project, and this Vizhinjam project happens to be what is called as the transshipment. With its strategic location just 10 nautical miles from the international route, the Europe, the Persian Europe and the Far East, Vizhinjam will emerge as the largest private port in Kerala and will be a huge revenue contributor to the state. And at the same time, in addition to being the first exclusive transshipment port, Vizhinjam will also make history as the first automated container terminal in India. This happens to be another significance. It will be a global bunkering hub supplying clean and green fuel like hydrogen, ammonia, so on and so forth. And this particular shipment, whose foundation was laid in the year 2015 by the then Congress government led by Oman Chandy in 2015. And this particular port has more than 30 berths. It will be able to handle all kinds of cargo as well, and ultimately its development will also bring more benefits to the state of Kerala. However, there are protests that have been taking place in couple of places in Kerala against this particular project. Why? That is because they assume that whenever this particular project comes into implementation, this will lead to sea erosion. So as a result, you have some of the fishermen who basically go on to believe that since this will lead to sea erosion, this can become a problem to their livelihood. They will not have enough fish catch as well. This could also lead to pollution in that particular area, and ultimately their livelihood source could be hit. And as a result, you have many people who are against it and are protesting against the implementation of this Vizhinjam project. However, when you weigh the balance, when you weigh the advantages, the development has more advantages in comparison are some of the arguments that are being made with respect to this article. Also, Vizhinjam would be one of the greenest ports in India, a fitting reply to the natural beauty and the environment conscious Kerala. These are some of the advantages of this particular port, and this is important from your preliminary examination point of view. Now let's look into the next practice question and the article. With respect to Baba Banda Singh Bahadur, which of the following statements are correct? He was a great Sikh warrior and a commander of Khalsa army who defeated the Mughals and freed a large part of North India. Banda Singh Bahadur abolished the zamindari system and granted property rights to the tillers of the land. He was a noble ruler who introduced the Nanak Shahi coins. Which of the statements are correct? All the three statements given are correct. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article or the ad that was posted on the Hindu makes a reference to Baba Banda Singh Bahadur ji. Because there was an ad which made a reference to it, we have taken this practice question. These kind of ads may also come in the Hindu, and that can also be important from your preliminary examination. Also, whenever an ad is given, it can be a policy decision, or it can be a scheme of the government of India, or it can be a scheme of a relevant states as well. So even when you have the schemes of a relevant states, that can also be important from the state examination point of view. In this particular case, we have one such example where an ad with respect to Banda Singh Bahadur has been given. So we have to understand it is important from the history point of view. He was a great Sikh warrior and a commander of Khalsa army who defeated the Mughals and freed a large part of India. He established Khalsa rule in Punjab, and Banda Singh Bahadur abolished the zamindari system, granted property rights to the tillers of the land. He was a noble ruler who also introduced Nanak Shahi coins as well, and he was captured by the Mughal ruler Farooq Siyar, brought to Delhi and put to death in a most of inhumans of the manner. His martyrdom took place in Mehrauli, where a monument still stands in memory of his martyrdom, which is an icon of exemplary courage, bravery and deep-rooted faith in Dharma. He was a great and true disciple of Guru Gobind Singh Ji Sahib. These are some of the important pointers that you have to remember from the examination point of view. So remember, Baba Banda Singh Bahadur was a Sikh warrior and he was a commander of the Khalsa army. And whom did he defeat? He defeated the army of the Mughals and freed a large sections of the northern part of India. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about the importance of water. Why is this being discussed? That is because we have the World Food Day. The World Food Day happens to be observed and celebrated every year on October 16th. Today happens to be October 16th. We are observing and celebrating the World Food Day, and the theme for this year happens to be water is life, water is food, leave no one behind. Since the emphasis is on water, this article speaks about the importance of water. First, let us understand some of the important factor with respect to the World Food Day. This happens to be an international day celebrated every year worldwide on October 16 to commemorate the date of the funding of the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization in 1945. The day is celebrated widely by many other organizations concerned with hunger and food security, including the World Food Programme, the World Health Organization, and the International Fund for Agricultural Development. So these are the themes of the World Food Day, and for the year 2023 it says water is life, water is food, leave no one behind, giving us the importance and significance of the water. And as we speak about the significance of the water, remember, right to water is a fundamental right guaranteed under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. We have right to life and personal liberty. Right to privacy is one of the implicit rights that is assumed under Article 21. Right to health is an implicit right that is assumed under Article 21. Similarly, right to water is an implicit right that is mentioned under right to health and personal liberty. Without water, clean water, if you're not able to drink clean water, this can ultimately take away or snatch the life of a person. So right to clean water, drinking water, and right to water is one of the fundamental right that is present under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. What is this article speaking about? The article in this particular case goes on to speak about that water conservation has to be taken up. There are measures that are taken by the government, and international organizations are also collaborating with the state government as well as the central government. Despite this, more efforts will have to be put in to conserve the water. Why? That is because what we are witnessing of late is the climate change crisis. Because of the climate change crisis unfolding, it will result in more chaos and ruckus because of the water issues, and ultimately these issues will have to be addressed, says this article. So there is going to be a water crisis. In order to address these water crisis, what are the steps and the measures that we have to take is what is this article all about. Let's look into what the author has to speak about when it comes to the importance of the water. The author in this particular case goes on to say that what we are witnessing is the climate extremities, that is in the form of drought-like conditions. We do not have enough rain as well. people have been witnessing water crisis. For example, Bengaluru is one of the cities which is also facing a lot of crisis. Similarly, there are many cities in India like in Chennai where there is a lot of pollution as well. So water pollution added with the water crisis is becoming a major problem to the major cities in India. So how are we going to change? We have to adopt innovative and collaborative approaches. For the innovative approaches, what we require is new technology, and this new technology should be able to clean the water, pollution should be reduced, and at the same time Israel as a country has also come up with some of the technology where it is able to make use of technology where water is purified at the utmost level. Sea water is taken up, it is filtered and is given as drinking water to many cities in Israel as well. That is the technology that we are speaking of. So whenever we speak about technology, what are the new ways of preventing water pollution, or what are the new ways of making sure that water is cleansed, it is purified so that it can be used for drinking, irrigation as well as for the agricultural and industrial purposes. So we have extremities in the form of lesser rainfall and drought-like conditions, climate change variations. To stop this, what we require is to adopt innovative and collaborative technologies where the state will have to step in. Then you require the assistance of the private organizations and the private companies, and ultimately the civil society, you, me, all of us will ultimately have to start conserving the water, where one of the means to conserve the water happens to be rainwater harvesting. So we have to ensure that we implement the rainwater harvesting and at the same time also give importance to the saving of water rather than wasting of the water. So we have to use water productively. So in order to ensure that these measures are taken, state missionary, private missionary, civil society will have to come up for the innovative and collaborative approaches. The third major concern with respect to the water is the food and the nutrition security. What do we understand by food and nutrition security? India as a nation, we are a population of more than 1 billion. We require food security, because if at all we do not have the food security, we will be going back to, like in the history books, what happened much prior to the Green Revolution, where we had to import a lot of food items, and this ultimately put a check on the food prices as well. Inflation starts increasing because we have to procure these food items from some other country. Our foreign exchanges will also start increasing as well, and as a result we will not be able to get the food items and give these food items for our own people. This will lead to food inflation and uttermost chaos in the society. In order to prevent this, what we require is the food and the nutritional security. Apart from the Green Revolution measures that we witnessed in the 1970s, what we have to pay heed to is to increase the yield, because there is a growing population. But what is the problem of late? When it comes to lands, the lands are decreasing. Why? Because most of these lands of late are also becoming a bedrock of what is called as the urbanization, concretization and also industrialization. So in the near future, the amount of land that we will have will continuously keep decreasing. But what is the expectation? The expectation is the food security will have to increase over a period of time. So with this limited land, what we have to increase is the yield. So how am I going to increase the yield? That is through the innovation and adaptation. So going forward, in order to make sure that we have food and nutritional security, there will be changes, there will be yield which will drop, and land will also reduce as well over a period of time. So India will require more advances in the technology so that we have much better yield. 60% of India's net zone area is rain-fed, contributing to 40% of the total food production, and rain-fed production are more resilient and sustainable. So in order to overcome these issues, since India is banking only on the rain-fed agriculture, we need to be innovative and we have to collaborate, says the author. What are the other areas which we have to focus on? Poor water management, misuse and pollution, climate crisis, These are the areas where we have to focus on, and about 40% of the planet's total area is getting degraded. So once the land gets degraded, it will not be useful for the growing of the crops, and as a result this will leave farmers with the less productive land. Small scale farmers, who make up about 80% of the farmers globally, are especially affected as they often lack access to finance, technology and irrigation to maintain a level of production that can sustain their livelihood. What are the kinds of farmers that we have? We have marginal farmers, which means that the land that they hold is less than 1 hectare of land. Then we have small farmers who hold land up to 2 hectares, that is 1 to 2 hectares, semi-medium farmers 2 to 4 hectares, medium farmers 4 to 10 hectares, and large farmers include 10,000 hectare or 10 hectare or above. These are the kinds of classification that we have when it comes to the farmers. So what is this article speaking of? The article in this particular case goes on to say that most of the farmers world over are small scale farmers, which means to say they have land which is less than 2 hectares of land. So when these people are coming up with the production of a particular crop, what they require is financing, what they require is technology. They do not have it at their disposal because it is a very costly affair. That is when the state will have to step in. It has to offer subsidies to them, and at the same time the state should also provide them free of cost in case they cannot be procured by the farmers. So the article goes on to say that if we are able to mold and bring these technologies, the food security can be taken care of, says the author. In order to ensure that such activities are taken up, what we require, as we discussed, as the collaboration. The collaboration will also have international collaborations as well. What are these international collaborations? What the article says is that we have couple of measures that have been taken by the government of India as well as by the respective states as well as international organizations. The FAO in Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Himachal Pradesh, Maharashtra is piloting a crop forecasting framework and model incorporating climate, soil characteristics and market information to aid rain-fed farmers in making informed decisions contributing to the food security. In every scenario, climate change without adapting measures reduces crop yields and lowers the nutritional quality of the produce, and as a result, what you will see is the drop in the numbers. Without adaptation measures of technology innovation, the rain-fed rice yields in India are projected to reduce by 20% in 2050, 47% in 2080, while irrigated rice fields are projected to decline by 3.5% and 5% in 2080. Wheat yields are projected to decrease by 19% in 2050, 40% in 2080, while kharif maize yields could decline by 18% and 23% if we do not make use of the technologies as envisaged by the original organizations from the international level. There is going to be drop of the yield, says this article. So the FAO has come up with certain measures, and at the same time we have other organizations as well. The WFP supports oil and water conservation, the building or mixing up of irrigation canals, dams, ponds and dikes, as well as flood barriers through food assistance in exchange for the labor. Similarly, the IFAD supports Indian states in leveraging the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. The FAO also supports sustainable transformation of agri systems and climate smart agriculture practices to improve water use efficiency. It has supported Farmer Water System Group in Uttar Pradesh and has helped smallhold farmers. Similarly, IFAD has enshrined climate change adaptation in its core strategies. IFSC has supported projects in Maharashtra, Odisha, Uttarakhand, Nagaland and Mizoram incorporate climate resilient seed varieties and crops, and the WFP is collaborating with the government of Odisha to develop solutions for smallholder farmers focusing on the women. So what is that they are doing? They are enhancing resilience through solar techniques, establishing community-based climate advisory services to help manage climate impacts and promote a millet value chain that reduces water usage and improves the nutrition. These are some of the measures that have been taken by the international organizations collaborating with the state governments as well as the union government. This is where we have to understand the importance of the collaboration, international organizations, and if you are able to reproduce the same in your examination, you will have more marks as well. So we have WFP, IFAD, FAO who have collaborated with the state governments as well as with the central government to ensure that water sustainability, water conservation and innovation technology is added into the picture. In order to ensure that such applications increase over a period of time, what we require is a political will. What we require is a political commitment, and what we require is policy initiatives taken by the political executive as well as the administrative executive. So what we require is the political will. Second, we need more policy as well as investments. It is not just the organization start off with something, but they have to continue the legacy of a particular scheme. So what you require is a constant investment that is made. It is not that I start a particular program and ultimately end a particular program after a considerable period of time. This will require constant efforts and constant investments. And UN food agencies are also working closely with the government of India and the state governments, so they should continue to use the leverage of the UN nations, and they should be able to provide the required information, and state governments and central government should continue with such schemes and programs as we just discussed. These are some of the measures that we may have to take up in the near future. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is important from your GS paper 4 ethics paper. So in ethics, we have some of the important concepts that comes into picture with respect to what is called as the just war theory. What is this just war theory? What are the rules that come into picture? When should a country go into the war is one of the key areas of your ethics, which is called as the just war theory. In just war theory, we have two important concepts called as just ad bellum, and we also have rules called as the just in bello. What is this just ad bellum? That is when you have to understand that the just ad bellum is regulated by the United Nations Charter. What is it? It is the conditions under which countries use force in their international relations. First concept what we have is just ad bellum. What is just ad bellum? Just ad bellum basically says that when a country will go into war, so there is an external aggression by a non-state actor, or it can be an external aggression by a state actor. When there is an aggression from a non-state actor or a state actor, that is when a country can go to war. So when a country can go to war is what is given in the just ad bellum, and how a country should conduct its war is what is called as just ad bellum. So I as a country would have entered into a war. When do I enter into a war is just ad bellum, and how do I conduct my war operations is just ad bellum. Let us try and understand what are these parameters when it comes to just ad bellum. When it comes to just ad bellum, remember Article 2 paragraph 4 of the Charter states, all members shall refrain in their international relations from the threat or use of force against the international integrity or political independence of any state, or in any other manner inconsistent with the purposes of the United Nations. However, Article 51 of the United Nations Charter clarifies, nothing in the present charter shall impair the inherent right of an individual or collective self-defense if an armed attack occurs against a member of the United Nations. So what is just ad bellum? It basically, when you look at United Nations, it says that you should not be engaging in war. Why you should not engage in war? That is because there are civilians who will be present. These civilians will be impacted. There will be large scale human right violations, there will be bloodshed, there will be people who will pass away, the near and dear ones are in a state of turmoil. They are constantly in a fear as to what could be their future. So in such state of mind, Article 21 of the Indian Constitution and right to life will also get violated to couple of people world over. So what this article says is that primarily you do not engage in war under Article 2, says the United Nations Charter. But there is an exception that is added to it under Article 51. What is this exception? The exception is you do not want to engage in war, but there is an aggressor, there is an hostile country which engages in the war. So can you keep quiet? No, you have to safeguard your rights, you have to safeguard the sovereignty and integrity of your country. So when there is an external aggression that is coming up your way, you have to prevent such external aggression. For that, an exception is given that you would be able to fight the external enemy by engaging in self-defense. So you are not the aggressor, but there is an aggressor who started this particular issue, and as a result, for you to protect your people, your sovereignty and integrity, you can engage in war. So what is the first parameter? Just ad bellum basically goes on to say, when you can enter into war is when you have self-defense in the picture. So there is an aggressor state that is coming your way. He wants to pounce on you, kill you and destroy the country. In that case, as a form of self-defense, you would be able to engage in war with that country which happens to be an aggressor. It can be a state actor which is supported by the military, or it can also be a non-state actor which can be some of the aggressive extremist forces like the Hamas in the present situation. So what is just ad bellum? Just ad bellum is part of the just war theory, which basically goes on to say, when you have to enter into a war, you can enter into a war only when there is self-defense in the picture, when you have to protect the sovereignty, integrity, the political boundary of your country, and at the same time safeguard the rights of the people. That is when you will enter into the war. So what is just ad bellum? It is that particular principle in ethics of just war theory where you emphasize on the fact that you enter into the war primarily as a sign of self-defense. When it comes to just ad bellum, what you have is certain principles that you have to take into picture. What are these principles? One is proper authority and public declaration. What is this proper authority? Let's say, for example, in India, we have the government of India. So in case of an external aggression, who will decide whether war has to be taken up or not? Or we have to conduct operations against the enemy country or not? It is the government of the respective states. Who is the proper authority? We have the people who go and vote, and they elect the representatives for that particular country who ultimately form government of that particular country. So the government of that country will ultimately decide whether they have to go wage a war or not. So proper authority and public declaration. So once the proper authority, the government decides that there is an external enemy who is trying to create a hostile environment, as a principle of self-defense, we have to engage in war. So the proper authority has to be the government, and then they declare, they make a public condonation and ultimately say that we are going for a war against that country so that we can make sure that we have our political boundaries intact and our human rights are safeguarded. So the proper authority happens to be the government. In case there is a non-state actor, or in case there is a terrorist organization, such terrorist organizations or the non-state actors do not become part of the proper authority, and if they go about war, such is not the proper authority. The second is with respect to the just cause. What is this just cause? I will enter into a war primarily not because I want to capture the land of some other country, but primarily because I have to safeguard my people. So you have a cause, and that cause is to prevent bloodshed. That cause is to prevent more excess operations by the hostile enemy country. So I have a cause, and that cause is to ensure that I have to safeguard the integrity of my country, sovereignty of my country, prevent the bloodshed, human right violations, political excesses, and if these people enter into an area, they will create a large scale ruckus in that society. To prevent it, what we have is a just cause. I have to protect my people, I have to safeguard of my industries, I have to ensure that my country is not in a state of turmoil. I have a cause. So if you have a cause, that cause should have the merits. That happens to be the second principle of just ad bellum. Third is with respect to the probability of the success, and fourth happens to be the last resort. What is this last resort? Let me come back to probability of success a bit later. What is this last resort? Last resort basically means that you engage in talks. So you basically engage in all kinds of diplomacy. So you ask them, I mean, when you speak about Chanakya, Chanakya has a very simple Chanakya Niti, Samadhana Bheda Dhanda. So what is Sama? You speak to them. Then you also have Dana, where you give exchange, you compromise on certain things. Then you also enter in Beda, that is you also compromise on some things, and you also put external pressure. So all of this you try to work on. First you request them, let's not engage in war, and you are ready to compromise. Then you also say, I'm ready to give this, and in exchange for that I'm ready to take something. Or you also ask an external country or another power to say that this particular country wants to engage in talks. Nothing of this sort works, and only as a last resort you are engaging in war. So only you are engaging in war because nothing of the other sort of diplomacy and the talks has worked, and you pick up the war only as a last resort, and only when your probability of success is for sure, only when you know for the fact that you would be able to stop the enemy, that is when you have to take up this initiative. So these are the principles of just ad bellum. So just ad bellum basically looks into all these factors. Next, what we have to look at just ad below, which are the rules. What are these rules? So you have engaged in the war, you would have asked the enemy not to conduct any such activity, but despite you making a recommendation and a request, they continue to be aggressive. So what do? I have to compulsorily engage in war. At that particular moment, I have ensured that my country is in war. So what are the principles that I have to follow? There are some principles which are called as the international humanitarian law, which provides the rules that must be followed during an armed conflict. It is contained in international customary law, Geneva Conventions of 1949 and additional protocols of 1977. It regulates the conduct of the parties or groups engaged in armed conflict. Its primary objective is to protect civilians and reduce the suffering of the war unleashes. No matter how just the cause of fighting a war, warring parties must comply with the IHL. What do I mean by it? When you consider a war, there are two kinds of people. One are the soldiers and the combatants. The other happens to be the civilians. Who are the soldiers or the combatants? They are the representatives of the state, or in cases where the non-state actor is present, these are the terrorist forces. So you have the combatants or the soldiers. It is the combatants or the soldiers who are the representatives of the state. So whenever you have the soldiers that are fighting against another force, these soldiers can engage in war. But if you encounter a civilian, they should not be harmed in any which way. So the war is between a state and another state, and the missionary of a state and a missionary of another state. So why engage with the civilians? So when you have soldiers, let's take them as the crime war criminals and put them behind bars, and whatever human rights will have to be followed, let's follow it, but let's not hit the civilians. Then you also have military infrastructure. Then you also have what is called as the civilian infrastructure. Why harm the civilian infrastructure when they have no role to play? They have nothing of that sort. They do not want to engage in the war. They have no parameters that they are engaging with. In that particular case, let's avoid the civilians. Let's avoid the civilian infrastructure and only hit on the soldiers as well as the military infrastructure. That happens to be the two important factors when it comes to the rules of the war. So the international law classifies armed conflict into two categories. One is the international armed conflict, non-international armed conflict. According to common article of Geneva Convention, IAC includes all cases of declared war or any other armed conflict between two or more countries. NAIC includes non-governmental forces involved in battle with the government forces. So if we consider the state of Israel as well as Palestine, we have one of the extremist organizations called as Hamas. So the non-governmental forces, so we did look at the proper authority. Who happens to be the proper authority? It is the government. But when you have the non-governmental forces like in Hamas, these are called as the non-international armed conflict. So you have Hamas, which is launching the rockets, and you have the government force Israel, which is also fighting against it. So what we have is a crisis brewing in Israel and in Palestine. So another important part that we have to look into is called as the hostage taking. Hostage taking is specifically recognized as a war crime by Article 8 of the Rome Statute, a treaty establishing the International Criminal Code. Article 1 of the International Convention against taking of the hostages, recognizing hostage taking as a crime. What is this hostage taking? Let's say for example, there are about 10 children. or let's say for example there are about 10 women. These 10 women will be taken as hostage or they'll be kidnapped as well, and ultimately will be under the control of an external enemy. So these 10 children or the 10 women will be taken as hostages and they will start blackmailing. In case you want a particular policy to be initiated, or we want a particular terrorist to be returned back, this is what is called as hostage taking, and hostage taking is also barred under international humanitarian laws. What happens in hostage taking? A group of people will be taken hostage, they will be kidnapped and will be kept under the enemy, and they have their own set of directives that they issue. Only when these directives that are issued are met by that particular country, that is when these women or the children will be released. So this is nothing but kidnapping of the people, blackmailing the country. This is also barred under international humanitarian law. Apart from that, there are a couple of other things as well. That is, what about the Gaza Strip blockade? Let's say for example, there is Israel that is in war with Hamas right now. So what has Israel done? We have the Gaza Strip. Let's assume this is the Israel. So we have Gaza Strip, which happens to be this area. So what they have done is they have blocked power. They have also not been able to send food supply. So Israel has blocked it. So many people in Palestine are suffering because of it. These happen to be the civilians as well. So if Israel is conducting such an activity which is harming the civilians in that particular place, this is also against the rules just at below, says the author. So this happens to be the just war theory, where we have just ad bellum, just at below. Just at bellum is basically why we are entering into the war, and just in below basically says we have entered into the war, but then there are rules that have to be followed. That is clear-cut differentiation of the combatants and the soldier on one side. Then we have these missionaries, that is the civilians on the other side. We can hit on the combatants, the soldiers and the military infrastructure, and the civilians should not be harmed, are some of the rules of the just war theory. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is important from your preliminary examination as well as the mains examination point of view. Whereas Haiti happens to be one of the countries where it is adjacent to Cuba. Where do we have it? In the Caribbean Sea. So there can be a question that can be a map based question in the Atlantic Ocean. Where is Haiti? It is close by to Caribbean Sea. It is in the Atlantic Ocean. Neighboring countries include Cuba, and then you also have Dominican Republic as well. So which are the neighboring countries of Haiti? Haiti happens to be this place, okay, and the neighboring countries include Cuba. Then you also have Dominican Republic, and the capital of Haiti happens to be Port-au-Prince. These are very important from the preliminary examination point of view. Why are we discussing about Haiti? That is because there is internal turmoil in the country. We have the government which has requested the United Nations, dear United Nations, there is an internal turmoil in Haiti. Why? Because there are criminal gangs. There are about 8 to 9 to 10 criminal gangs who are operating within Haiti, and they are creating a large scale human rights violations. So it has requested the UN, and the United Nations has now approved, and this particular program that has been approved by the United Nations for making sure that the law and order is in place in Haiti is what is called as multinational security mission. So what is this multinational security mission? Haiti currently has some issues in the form of law and order issues. In order to ensure that these law and order issues are addressed, what we require is the assistance of the United Nations, which the government has sought out for. And as a result, we have this multinational security mission where Kenya is taking up the leadership, and it is ultimately keeping a check of the law and order issue in Haiti, which is what is called as multinational security mission. So unlike UN peacekeeping mission to Haiti that ended in 2017, the multinational security mission will not be operated by UN. So this is the first principle, that it will not be operated by UN. Kenya has volunteered to lead this particular force, and other countries like Bahamas, Jamaica, Antigua and Barbuda has also offered support. The resolution says that force will provide operational support to the Haitian National Force including building its capacity to counter gangs, improve security conditions in the country, and also secure ports, airports, and critical intersections. Notably, the resolutions also add that forces will have the authority to make arrests in coordination with the Haitian police. And from the preliminary examination point of view, also remember these gangs have also blocked couple of ports as well. They have seized what is called as Port Varox. Port Varox happens to be one of the important ports in country of Haiti, and whenever you can have a question like, for example, recently Port Varox was in news. It is part of which country? Remember, it is part of Haiti. So there is a large scale turmoil. In order to ensure there is law and order issue which is addressed, a request was made by the government to United Nations. So we have the multinational security mission. So you might also get another question. Multinational security mission was recently in news. It was with respect to which country and the operations? So it is with respect to Haiti, but who is taking the leadership of the multinational security mission? It happens to be Kenya, supported by other countries like Bahamas, Jamaica, Antigua and Bermuda. So this will basically ensure that law and order issue that Haiti is facing will be addressed by these groups, and ultimately country will be governed as per the democratic principles. Now let's look into the next article. This article says study estimates count of UAVs required for the 3 services. The study has recommended procurement of 31 MQ-9B altitude UAVs and 155 medium altitude UAVs, and the Chief of Defence Staff has ordered another study on the use of armoured helicopters by the armed forces. What are we speaking about? We are speaking about the unmanned air vehicles. What are we speaking about? We are speaking about the drones. So a study was conducted, and this particular study said that what we have to increase is the number of UAVs or the drones, primarily because we do not want to have human loss, primarily because we need to have a constant surveillance, and primarily because we need it for intelligence and surveillance as well. So we have to procure more UAVs, and this article has given different kinds of UAVs. For example, MQ-9B HL UAVs. Which country has done it? Is it an indigenous production, or are we importing it with some other countries? Please put it on the comment section. So we have many UAVs or the drones. Which are the UAVs which you have procured from other countries? Please put it on the comment section. Which are the indigenous ones? Again, put it on the comment section. So what we have to do is increase these UAVs, is what is this article all about. Now let's look into the next article. This article says center likely to raise age of retirement of scientists to 65. When you look at the present ages, you have the scientists who are retiring at the age of 60 as well as 62. At present, scientists in most wings of the government retire at the age of 60, while those working at the Indian Council of Agricultural Research and Indian Council of Medical Research retire at the age of 62. Whenever they retire, all that they leave is the wisdom. So many people would not be able to learn from them, and at the same time they will not be able to contribute for the government of India. Despite they are able to still work for the country as well as for the government of India, 60 is too early an age for them to retire. In order to provide more assist, in order to give them more boost, and in order to provide boost to the science and technology domain, their services will be extended. So whatever is the present retirement age of 60 and 62, this will be further enhanced to about 65. So they will be able to work for the government of India up until the age of 65, primarily because they would be able to contribute to the science and technology domain. They would be able to share their wisdom with the younger generation, and they will be able to contribute to the success of the science and technology. So the aim is to stem the flight of the top scientists to universities and IITs. Science Ministry sends note to 14 bodies seeking details of those nearing retirement and financial implication of enhanced tenures. So all that they are trying to say is that their tenure will be increased by about 5 years to about 3 years. Is this the first time that this particular proposal has been made? No. This is not the first time that the government has mooted raising the retirement age. A draft cabinet note in 2015 led by the ministry had said the move would bring parity in service conditions of research scientists working in different arms of the government, but this was not successful. Another proposal is made right now, so we have to wait and watch whether this will be implemented or not. Now let's look into the next article. This article says IOC amends Olympic Charter to strengthen its human rights commitments. So we have the International Olympic Committee, which has amended the Olympic Charter to strengthen its human rights commitments during its first day of 141st session. So what is this article speaking about? There are many sports people or people in different sports, sportsmen and women, who have been facing some of the human right violations. Let me give you an example. There was one incident that happened in China. What happened in China? There was a woman who was engaged with, she was playing badminton. This person who was engaged in playing badminton, she had issues with respect to those people who were from the Communist Party of China. What was an issue? She said that there were few men who were trying to be very aggressive with her and also seek some favors from her. She had voiced this concern as well with the Chinese authorities, but then of late, whenever she has voiced her concerns with respect to what the Chinese political party, the Communist Party of China and its authorities were able to do, her voice was immediately silenced. There have been sexual favors that have been asked from women, sportswomen, and there have been couple of human right violations that have been committed as well. In order to address such issues, what we have is the International Olympic Committee, which has amended the Olympic Charter. So what are the changes that have been brought about? The new wordings in the fundamental principles of Olympism are internationally recognized human rights, and within the remit of the Olympic movement, in the fundamental principles of Olympism 4, internationally recognized human rights, within the remit of Olympic movement, there is a major step in the commitment towards human rights. So all those human rights which get and are being spoken by these sportsmen and the women will be recognized, and in case there is any violation, the same will be referred to the committee. The committee will look into the case, and if need be, they will offer their recommendation is what is this Olympic Charter all about. Now let's look into the next article. This article is important from your GS paper 3, that is environment and ecology. The article here is speaking about what is called as estivation or aestivation. What is it? It happens to be a biological phenomenon whereby the animal enters a long period of dormancy or inactivity in response to high temperature or maybe even drought-like conditions. It is a survival strategy that helps animal conserve energy and water in a difficult period. What exactly happens? Let's say for example there is summer. So in summer, species may not be able to get water. So then that is when a species will engage into a dormant state and it will conserve its energy. So during estivation, the animal often seeks shelter in a cool underground burrow, cervix or cocoon. It will remain in that state of reduced metabolic activity, which in turn reduces the rate at which body consumes energy. And estivation can also be a way of avoiding desiccation, which means extreme dryness of the skin, and also lower the risk of being preyed on by the predator. These are some of the points with respect to estivation. So remember, estivation is that particular concept or phenomenon whereby animal enters into a long period of dormancy or inactivity in response to the high temperature. Because there is high temperature, to conserve the energy, it enters into a dormant state. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. In case you are liking these initiatives, please do like, subscribe to our YouTube channel and also share it with your fellow aspirants as well. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.